So let's talk a little bit about, okay, your freshman year and sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
What was the demands of, I guess, collegiate volleyball playing on your body, right? And let's talk a little bit about some of the injuries that you had to overcome and how this presented itself throughout your career. You can start wherever you want to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that first year, of course, you're kind of learning, but you're also getting thrown into the fire too. So it's kind of, that's your approach to learning. You're in there, and there's not really a better way to do it. And eventually you kind of catch on. But as a freshman, I wanted to have the opportunity to start, but I didn't think I ever would get there. But after maybe a few preseason games, I was actually thrown into the game a few times outside. And I just remember being at the sub line and trembling, like being terrified to go into the game, but knowing that, you know, I just got to do what I got to do. The team needs me, and just got to do what we practice. I think one of those preseason games, I forget who we played, but I ended up being one of the leading attackers that game. And I think from then on, the rest of the season, I was basically a starter. And so as a freshman, it's definitely intimidating, especially in the stand. I remember being subbed in for the first few times and trembling those few times going in. And you know, you kind of get over it eventually. You kind of shake it off after a few plays, but it was scary. And you know, just got to do what you practice and kind of rely on your teammates and the crowd, and it gets a little bit easier. But unfortunately, so that first year, when I had kind of already solidified that starting position, they found that I actually had something wrong with my shoulder. So they sent me into an MRI, and this was one of the injection kind, not like the one that I did when I lived in California. And so you could definitely get a better view of the shoulder. And they found that I had a tear. So that was kind of tough, because they basically told me there really wasn't much I could do besides just rehab, and rehab a lot. So and that was just to prevent from further tear. But as a starter, I was getting a decent amount of swings, whether it was in games or practices, getting reps. So that was kind of tough. And I noticed as the year progressed, I was feeling more and more pain. So that first year was kind of tough. But I think by the end of that first season, I kind of learned how to live with the pain, and I knew that even though it had gotten a little bit worse, I probably would eventually just need surgery.
Got it. That's actually pretty common that, you know, try rehab first, especially if the tear was so small that you had to do the special MRI to actually see the tear that was there, right? But before I go into that, what made you get the MRI in the first place? Like, how bad was it, or how much was it bothering you through that freshman year?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. So when we were doing physicals right before we started camp, they were doing just basic tests. They would put pressure on your arm and you have to lift it and something like that. And so our athletic trainer, she was doing that with me. She put her arm on my arm and I try to lift mine up and I'm really struggling. And she looks at me and she's like, "Is that all you can do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm really struggling here." And she says, "Uh-oh."
And that was Renee, right?
This was Renee.
Yes.
Yeah. So Renee, from at that point, kind of had a feeling there was something going on. So she sent me for that MRI, and that's where we kind of saw.
Got it.
And from then on out, me and Renee were besties the next 4 years.
Yes.
She actually always joked with me that I was damaged goods because I came in with that tear.
With that tear, yes. So you actually found out before the season even started.
Yes. So
Yes.
we found out during that season, in the beginning of the season.
And then you were still going through camp and practices and everything relatively like normal, just pushing through some of the discomfort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would do a lot of rehab on our free time, and I just remember spending a lot of time in the training room.
Yes. Yes.
And when I did start playing, when they put me into the games, I think because they were aware that I became a starter, they kind of started, limiting swings and practices. So I would be okay for the games.
Got it.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question. Thinking back to high school, right? Because you were one of the players that got set a lot, right? You were one of the go-to hitters. And a lot of people don't, it's hard to remember. But in your estimation, how many swings would you take in a practice or in a week or whatever? In a practice, like, were you talking about like 200?
Something
less?
Like that.
Yeah. Which is a lot of swings, right?
It is. Yeah.
And you think about that, I guess stress and strain from years prior to getting to UH, right? UH was the first time that you were actually like modifying how many swings you would take, right?
Yeah.
Do you know like what they were kind of shooting for, or how much you would have to modify from UH practices? Like how many swings would you think that you're taking?
I think they would probably cut it in half for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
From compared to the other hitters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 50% volume just to kind of, save your shoulder and do whatever volume is appropriate so that you still can get the reps. You still can, get stronger and practice the things you need without going overboard beyond that threshold where it's just irritating your slap tear.
Yeah.
Right? So let's walk us through that now. You said you kind of played through it your freshman year. Sophomore year, it was kind of getting a little bit worse, you would say?
I would say it got a lot worse my sophomore year. Sophomore year was really, really tough for me. That was when we had a really good team that year too. We had a feeling that we could potentially make it far in the NCAA playoffs. So there was a lot on our shoulders too, and kind of knowing that I was a starter and kind of needed to help the team progress through that, it was kind of tough because I was experiencing a lot of pain with my shoulder, and then I started noticing that it would be really weak. Some days were better than others, of course, but I could see it progressively getting weaker, and more and more pain. I remember sometimes before games, I would be trying to warm it up in the hallway and just trying to loosen it up, and it would be so painful and just feel so weak. There were like times where I went to the bathroom and cried a little bit before games, just kind of out of frustration.
Yes.
That season, they actually, because I was having such a tough time and they really needed me, they had me take a few cortisone shots.
Okay.
And that's kind of to help with inflammation and to subdue the pain a little bit. So I took, I want to say, at least 3 that season. And they didn't last too long, but they would try to do them before big games too.
Yes.
Yeah.
What would you say, getting all of these things that will help you kind of manage the pain a little bit more, what would you say, in your words, like what percentage of performance were you at? Wow.
I probably want to say it's somewhere around 60, 70.
Yeah. And you were still playing Division I volleyball, so that says a lot too.